Ah, brother.
My brother Frankie. how you
Christmas
doing,
time,
man?
huh?
Merry, 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 merry.
Merry, 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 merry Christmas.
Bah! Humbug!
Merry,
Are
merry,
there no workhouses?
merry, 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 merry
I
Christmas.
love that. The old Christmas Carol. Remember the one with Alice the Sim, the original one?
No.
Oh, the real old one? That's the best one, man, where he looks out the window. Are there no workhouses?
Oh, yeah.
Humbug!
I didn't realize who Alistair Sim was.
Yeah, that was the original guy who played Scrooge. He was terrific.
Now playing that role is me.
I don't know, man. It is for kids. I obviously, Christmas seems more for kids than anything else. But you got to get in the Christmas spirit. And the only way you get in the Christmas spirit is to give. You got to give more than you get.
And you're going to New York?
Yeah, count the grandkids, make sure everything is kosher. I'm looking forward to that, of course. Seeing the kids. That's the whole deal.
That's the whole deal, indeed.
And my daughter gave me a list yesterday of what they not expect, but
what they want.
Yeah.
And you'll probably get them everything.
Everything on that list I got.
But I've got 2 grandkids now, and I often wonder how they will see Christmas, because we get them whatever they want, whenever they want it. So every day is Christmas.
It's great to be in that position, though. It's great to be in that position. When I was a kid, and I swear to God, my old man, from the other side, and he was like, he wasn't what you call a finesse guy. My old man was
really.
He used to start. He was such a union guy. He used to start all the stories. Like once upon a time and a half. He was a real working man, a blue collar guy. Once upon a time and a half. But no, he said to me, listen. First of all, I was like 5 years old. He says, what do you want for Christmas? And get all that Santa Claus shit out of your head. He said, there ain't Santa Claus. That's all American bullshit.
By the way, if there's any preschoolers watching the show,
doubtful.
Billy is not saying there's no Santa Claus.
We don't get a lot of preschoolers. We get pre-wakers. Our demographic is more, everybody about to die in a couple of weeks. But he said to me, pick one present. We'll go up to Fordham Road, pick out one present. That's what you get for Christmas, and that's the deal. I often told you when I was the catcher, I got the shin guards 1 year, the catch the next year, the mask the next year. That's the way it was. But you're in a position you can give your grandkids anything, and it's great. Of course, you can't buy them, like I want to show up and make a splash, Grandpa's here, but.
Yeah, it comes Christmas morning, and I guarantee you what's going to happen. My wife and daughter are going to get these great elaborate gifts for Frankie, my grandchild, and she's going to spend the time with the paper and the boxes.
Exactly.
That's what Christmas is to them.
That's it. That's the kids.
Well, I mean, she's not even 2 yet, so she's still on papers and boxes as opposed to contents.
Do you?
But soon she'll segue into contents.
Do you celebrate the 7 fishes on Christmas Eve? Do you do the Italian thing?
I used to, when I was a boy, because my father would make calamari and everything else, and clams and oysters, and I didn't eat any of it.
Really?
Oh,
I love that. That's my favorite meal of the year. My ex-wife's Italian, as you know, and I used to go over there, and I loved the 7 fishes. The calamari, the bacala.
Yep.
He made the bacala too, the cod, the olives. That's good stuff.
And my brother still does it. My brother Bruce in Florida, he makes 7 fishes every year. But not with me, because I can't find 7 fishes that I like.
So between the 7 fishes and the wine, you didn't like any of them.
I like one fish fried. any fish fried. That's a good one for me.
Actually, 2 of my best dishes are linguine with clam sauce and shrimp marinara.
Yeah.
I mean, I love those, both of them. And I like anything in the shell, man. Anything that's on the bottom of the ocean, whether it's lobster or crabs or clams or oysters.
Or old shoes.
Old shoes, anything at all from the bottom of the ocean. I've always been a social climber, even with my eating. Always on the bottom. And they eat all the shit. They eat everything that comes down from the other fish. And you got an extra.
So, Billy, can you suggest any good Christmas gifts this year?
A good Christmas gift?
Yeah.
Yeah, pay off your credit cards. I don't know. I mean, I'm getting the kids, well, one's 8 and the other one's 6, one's 9. So I'm getting them a toboggan. child's toboggan.
Let me try this again. Billy, can you suggest any good Christmas gifts for our readers or our viewers?
Oh, yes. So it's the lead. I'm sorry. I missed the lead.
Holy Christ.
Yes, I can, Frank. Oddly enough, I can.
And what might those be?
I would give the gift of reading, Frank. That's what I would give. As a matter of fact, there's 3 books out that I can highly recommend. Lamar's Gamble, If These Lips Could Talk, or Combustible.
Right.
All 3 different types of books. All fine reading, great reviews. Check on Amazon, look at the reviews. Don't buy a pig in a poke. And you'll very proud of these books, all 3 of them. And they're selling well.
And on another subject, what are you reading currently?
What am I reading currently? I was reading, believe it or not, Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
Again?
I haven't read it since senior year of high school.
It hasn't changed.
No. No, it hasn't. It's still about a big fish. He's buried, Herman Melville. He's buried in the Bronx.
Really?
He's buried in Woodlawn Cemetery.
And where are you going to be buried?
In the ground, Frank. In the ground. I guess they're just going to torch me. I think I'm pretty much
torch.
Yeah, I'm into like the cremate.
They tried to torch you many times in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
I've been torched, Frank. I've been torched. Yeah, but so I'm reading Moby Dick, actually, because I just want to see what it's really about. When we had a teacher in the 8th grade, a brother, Marist Brothers, I was educated by. What did I have? Sacred Heart Brothers up until the 8th grade, then Marist Brothers in high school at Mount. And guy came in one day. He was Brother Emilius was his name. I'll never forget him. Scottish teacher. And he came in. He says, "All right, we have a 42 book reading list. That's absolutely ridiculous." He says, "We're going to cut it down to 1 book. We're going to do Moby Dick by Herman Melville." Everybody went, "Yay, 1 book! It's great."
1,000 pages.
Oh man, this guy tore Moby Dick apart. We didn't get through. We were reading the paragraph for like 2 weeks, And I don't know if all this shit, like, they talk about Melville, Moby Dick, and about how the white whale, represents God and his vengeance of the white whale for taking his life. I don't think Melville meant all that shit when he wrote it. He wrote a book about whales.
I'll tell you a quick story. Back maybe 10, 20 years ago, there was a guy on TV who was interviewing celebrities. And he was interviewing Gene Kelly about Anchors Away with the musical with
Sinatra, right?
Sinatra and Jules Munchin. And he said, I noticed this beautiful, beautiful dance that you did. You danced past manhole covers, and that represented this, and light posts, and that represented this, and this is. And Gene Kelly says, "What? What are you talking about? It was just 3 sailors dancing down the street."
Yeah. I think half of the shit that the literary people put into it later. Like the guy wrote the book about whales.
Yeah.
They'll be talking about our books like that, Frank.
Yes.
Like that. They'll say like Combustible's really a story about a guy who had a vengeance for God,
But let me tell you, a guy that is a god in Kentucky is our next guest, Dan Issel. What a great career he's had.
Love to watch him play, man. He was like he was a blue collar
guy.
A blue collar basketball player.
Yep.
If anything was he was like, in a way, he reminded me of Bird, that he couldn't jump that good, couldn't run that fast, but all he did was like score points like a machine. I mean, the guy was incredible.
Yeah.
The amount of points he scored.
I'm going to guess that he could jump better and run faster than 99.9% of people on the earth today.
Oh, without a doubt.
So,
yeah. And even in his profession, he got up there.
That's like this sportscaster Colin Cowherd says, "Well, so-and-so is not a great athlete." Fuck you. He's playing in the NBA. I mean, he's playing in the NFL. He's not a very athletic quarterback. He's playing in the NFL. Baker Mayfield is not a great athlete.
Yeah.
Mac Jones is not a great athlete. Screw you.
Well, they say the guy at the end of the bench, the guy who never even gets in the NBA, is better than just about 99% of all the college players. I mean,
for sure. For sure.
Just to make the cut.
Yeah. So let's get Dan Issel on.
Yeah, great, man. I'd love to meet Dan Issel.
Can we get Dan? There he is. How are you, my friend?
I'm terrific. How are you, Frank?
Really good, really good. That's my partner, Billy O'Connor.
How are you, Dan? A pleasure to meet you. Real honor. Real honor for me.
And that's my other partner, Derek Harris, who you can't see.
Hello.
Hi, Derek. Hi, Derek.
How you doing?
Wait, what? Wait a second. What's wrong with Billy's shirt?
Yeah, I know.
I told him.
I should be saying Kentucky, but I was a late bloomer. I didn't know any better, you know?
So let me ask you a question. Have you and Sherry finished your Christmas shopping yet?
I have finished mine because I only have to get one gift.
Yep.
Unfortunately for Sherry, she has to get the rest of them. So I think she's pretty well finished too, though. So we're in good shape.
Yeah, well, your gift is very, very, very important one. You have to get Sherry's.
Exactly.
Well, I think we all do the same thing. We just sit back and write the checks, you know, just there you go.
Well, our grandchildren have gotten so old that now that they'd rather have the money than anything we could pick out for them. So
Absolutely.
writing the check might be the best thing.
So I see you're wearing a Batavia high school jacket, sweater. What is that?
That's my high school, Batavia High School. Thank goodness they still keep me in gear. I can't get anything out of the University of Kentucky or the Denver Nuggets, but my high school takes care of me.
And you went to high school with Kenny Anderson and Craig Sager. Is that correct?
Kenny and I grew up. Our backyards butted up against each other.
Wow.
I've known Kenny since I was in the 7th grade, and he was in the 6th grade. And Craig Sager was my brother Greg's best friend when they were growing up. So from our little community, a few famous names.
And for the uninitiated, Kenny Anderson was the quarterback, and I can't believe he's not in a Hall of Fame yet, for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Craig Sager was the TNT sports announcer, who recently passed away within the last 2 years of cancer. So that's quite a high school. I remember you telling me you and Kenny Anderson used to play catch across the fence in the backyard.
Yeah, we played. We had a wiffle ball tournaments back then. So, what's really funny about Kenny is Kenny went to Little Augustana College on a half academic, half basketball scholarship, and winds up playing in the NFL for 15 years. And as you said, Frank, it's a shame. Of course, I'm very biased, but it's a shame he's not in the Hall of Fame. He had a great football career with the Bengals.
Yeah, my guess is he's going to get in probably on the next ballot, because he's sort of like our mutual friend Artis Gilmore. You were voted into the Hall of Fame in 1993, and you played concurrently with Artis. He was your teammate and then a foe, and it took Artis to 2011 to get in. And I would talk to Bill Walton, and I would talk to Kareem, and they would say, "What do you mean he's not in?" And I think Kenny Anderson is sort of the same thing. He's a way overlooked superstar, and he belongs in a Hall of Fame, and he's deserving of being in a Hall of Fame. And I think it's a shame that he's not in yet.
And you talk about Artis, and Walton, Kareem only had to play against him a couple of times a year. I had to guard him for 4 years. I had to guard him every day in practice with the Colonels.
Wow. That's some task, guarding Artis Gilmore.
Yeah.
Guarding you was no bargain either.
Boy, that's for sure. I think when you retired, you had the 4th leading scorer in the ABA and the NBA combined, behind Kareem, Julius Erving, and Wilt Chamberlain. Is that correct?
I believe so. I've gone a little further down the line now, but it's nice that people recognize those ABA numbers, because I think the last 3 or 4 years of the ABA, and Artis will tell you the same thing, we had as many great players and were playing as good a basketball as they were playing in the NBA.
Yeah, it surprises me that the NBA now is the only league that doesn't recognize the ABA statistics. Major League Baseball is incorporating the Negro Leagues. The NFL automatically absorb the AFL stats into their leagues. And I know Julius Erving has been trying to get the ABA stats included. What's your take on that?
Well, there were a lot of things when the merger took place in 1976. There were a lot of things that should have happened. Getting the statistics included, getting us ABA players service time for our retirement for our years in the ABA. But at that point, Frank, the ABA was just thankful that we weren't folding the whole league, that the NBA was accepting some of the teams, 4 of the teams. I think we didn't have things established then that should have been established at the time of the merger.
Well, the ABA, I mean, in my opinion, I'd like to have yours, of course. I think it sort of revolutionized the NBA. I mean, it changed it so much, not just the three-point shot, but they used to draft underclassmen, right? What was the big drawback? The television contract? Why didn't it just, I mean, it exploded, but it didn't explode until it really merged, right?
Yeah, no, 100%, Billy. The ABA was never able to get a television contract. We played in smaller venues, in smaller markets, and so without a TV contract, we didn't get as much exposure. But you're absolutely right. The ABA, the three-point line, the wide open, getting up and down the floor. The NBA at that time just walked the ball up the floor and tried to pound it inside. Even the All-Star celebration, that all came from the ABA. The first slam dunk contest ever was in 1976 in the ABA All-Star game with Julius Erving and Artis and David Thompson and a few others. And so, and as you said, we took players early. The NBA still had a rule that they couldn't draft you until your college graduated. It didn't matter if you went to college or not. They couldn't draft you. And, the ABA would take an 8th grader if they thought he could play. So, and that's why we got great players like Doc, like George Gervin, Julius Erving. We can go just down the line. And, a lot of great players early came to the ABA.
I was at that 76 All-Star game in Denver. I was there as a guest of artists. I was doing some work in Denver at the time. And of course, wherever artists went was in a city. If I was there, I would go to the game. And it was amazing to see that group, that collection of talent at the All-Star game. It was unbelievable.
If you remember, Frank, what happened, I think at that point, we were down to only 7 teams in the ABA. And so on a specific date, the team that was in first place would play against the all-stars of the other 6 teams. And so the Nuggets were in first place. And so our team with David Thompson and Bobby Jones and some of the others played a collection of the great ABA players in that game. And just to show you how teamwork works, I think we beat them by about 20 points.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chemistry and teamwork.
Yeah.
That's
And going back to 75, 74, 75, I think the 74 Colonels, the 75 Colonels, and your Nuggets were the equal to many NBA teams and probably better. Probably the 75 Colonels probably could have won the NBA championship if the merger had occurred by then.
Yeah. I'd like to think the same thing. When you look at the Hall of Famers on that team, Frank, not only did we have Artis, who is a Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, we had Louis Dampier, a great three-point shooter who's also in the Hall of Fame, and our coach was Hubie Brown. And so that was a great team. And our owner challenged the Warriors, who won the NBA championship that year with Rick Barry, to a game to decide who was the better team. But of course, the Warriors would have had everything to lose and nothing to gain, and so they politely turned that game down.
Yeah, the ABA, in my recollection, was sort of like watching somebody on ice skates playing basketball. I mean, you guys were up and down the court, and like you said, the NBA was like they'd walk it up, push it into the center, push it back out. It's very much like the AFL NFL merger, where the NFL was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and the AFL opened it all
Yep.
up.
You're absolutely right, Billy. That was the way we played. Now I think it started that way because we had such great perimeter players from the very beginning, and Mel Daniels was probably the only legitimate big man in the ABA. But then when Artis joined our team in '70, from that point on, we were getting better talent than the NBA. But it remained a wide open game. We certainly didn't shoot as many 3-pointers as they shoot today,
No.
but it was still part of the offense, and I think exciting basketball.
Oh, great basketball.
You talk about the NBA today. Do you feel that the game has changed mightily since the days you were playing?
I think it has changed quite a bit for 2 reasons, Frank. I think today's athletes are just, it's unbelievable. The things they can do physically far exceed what we were able to do back then. However, because of that, I think a lot of these kids don't take the time, or they're not made to take the time to really play the fundamentals, to learn the fundamentals, learn how to play the game. And so as a result, I think it's to watch it. It's very pleasing to watch these great athletes perform. If you're a basketball purist, I was watching a college game last night, and I had to turn it off. All they did was shoot 3-pointers, and it was boing, boing, boing. And so some of this basketball today is hard to watch.
Yeah.
Going back 15 years ago or 20 years ago now, when Coach Wooden was alive, he even said then he didn't even like to watch the men play. That if he wanted to watch the purity of basketball, he would watch the women play. He said the women's game is more like the game that I taught.
Wow. Come from John.
I think he's absolutely right. The girls, and this goes back to the physical aspect of it, the girls don't play above the rim. At least most of them don't play above the rim. But if you watch a girls' game, a women's game today, either the WNBA or college, I think Coach Wooden's right. They seem to be a lot sounder fundamentally than the men do.
What do you attribute the fact that the athletes are bigger and stronger now today? You think it's because of personal trainers or the equipment they have in the gym? Like you said before, if I watch the NBA now, it's like you give it to the superstar. There could be 4 guys on him. It don't matter. He's going to score.
He's going to shoot.
He's going to shoot no matter what. Yeah, and probably score. But I always thought college. Watching college is more pass. More fundamental basketball. But what do you attribute the fact that these guys are bigger and stronger? And you think it's just better training facilities or personal trainers, or what is it?
I think it's a couple of things, Billy. I think the human race has evolved, and we're just bigger and stronger than humans were 30, 40, 50 years ago. My granddaughter plays volleyball, and I go to these national volleyball tournaments, and I can't believe. There's a gym full of girls that are 6'4" and 6'5". It's just amazing. And then the other thing is, you say, training is much better today. The nutrition, the weightlifting. I never lifted a weight in my life.
Other than ours.
The biggest thing, the heaviest thing I lifted was a 12-ounce Budweiser. It's much different today for sure.
By the way, that reminds me, you and Billy have met in the past.
Well, we didn't really meet, but I believe I've seen you a couple of times. And there's a bar in New Orleans called Pat O'Brien's, which is one of the oldest bars in the country, and one of the busiest. And when you guys used to play the Jazz, I was tending bar there. in the main ballroom, and I believe I saw you there a couple of times, just a couple of times. And
you know what? You might be right, Billy. You might be.
yeah, Hot Rod Huntley was the voice of the Jazz at the time, and he was a regular in there. And I believe you came in a couple of times when you were playing the Jazz.
Yeah.
And Butch Van Bredikoff, I think, was the coach of the Jazz at them days, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Yeah. But you were always a standout guy, man. Tell me those early years, man. I used to go out and see the Nets play out in Long Island. And it was a real dump, the gym. I remember they used to play in
Hempstead.
At Hempstead, Long Island. Yeah, I used to go out and see Dr. J play, just because I wanted to see basketball. And you guys must have had some rough journeys in those early years with the ABA.
Well, we flew coach. We stayed in motels where the doors opened to the outside. I think when I first went to the Colonels, we got $12 a day per diem. Wow. It was a real treat to watch artists try to fly those Piedmont airplanes. How he did it, I'll never know. But Billy, you forget about all of those bad things, and you only remember the good things. I remember there was a place that we played the Nets. It was called the Long Island Garden. Uh-huh. And that, I don't know if you remember that place, but it was a toilet. It was so cold in there. The guys on the bench brought their overcoats out of the locker room. And so when the coach put you in the game, you not only had to take off your warm-ups, you had to take off your coat too to get into the game. But wow. But you forget, and Louis and I, one night we're playing in Dallas. The Dallas Chaparrals, who moved to San Antonio and, of course, became a very successful franchise. But one night, we're playing Dallas during the national anthem. Louis and I counted how many people were in the crowd. So, that tells you what the early days of the ABA.
Well, also in the early days of the ABA, and probably even until the mid-'80s or even the '90s, if you played a game the night before and you had a game the next night on the road, you had to take the first flight out in the morning. So if your game was finishing at 10 o'clock and your adrenaline stopped pumping at like 1 or 2, and the first flight out to the next city was 6 o'clock, you had to be on that flight. And because they were flying commercial, they didn't have any choice. So there were a lot of tired basketball players in those days.
And there was the ABA Players Association, if it existed at all, wasn't very strong. And so we would fly. I remember one game we played in San Diego, and the next night we played in Memphis. And as you said, Frank, we had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning in San Diego, which was already 7 o'clock Memphis time, fly halfway across the country and play that night. We also, and people will find this hard to believe, we also played back-to-back games.
Right.
Three nights in a row.
Wow.
So much for the guys taking rest like they do today.
Yeah, exactly.
And artists told me that you also had to wash your own uniforms in those days. And he said on the end of a long road trip, some guys could get pretty rank under the boards.
That's one way to get an open shot.
I was Louis Dampier and I roomed together, and we used to hang our jerseys over the lampshade to dry them out so that we could pack them and be ready to go the next day. But you're right. By the end of a 3 or 4 game road trip, those jerseys could stand up by themselves. You didn't have to put them over a lampshade.
Was that, in the early years in the AFL, they said that, these guys were worried about their checks bouncing. Was there any race to the bank to get the checks cashed in them days?
I was always blessed. I played with 2 of the most sound financial ABA franchises, first here in Louisville with the Colonels, and then the last year in Denver. So I didn't have to worry about that. But I will tell you a quick story. I was traded to a team from the Colonels. I was traded to a team called the Baltimore Claws. And I was in Baltimore for 10 days. It was the old Memphis franchise. And they never paid the Colonel's owner for my contract. And so after 10 days, I was on my way to Denver. Thank goodness, because, I played 10 more years with the Nuggets. But while I was in Baltimore, I did collect one paycheck. And I used that paycheck to open my first account in Denver. And that check bounced higher than a bat.
And you had no recourse.
I did have one bad check.
The Baltimore Clause, huh?
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that the Baltimore Clause would have bounced the check?
That's incredible.
Hey, Dan, I've heard several theories about this, but why do you think the Colonels weren't incorporated into the NBA merger?
I think the owner at the time was John Y. Brown. Of course, John started Kentucky Fried Chicken and several other national franchised restaurants, and was governor of Kentucky for 4 years. And John, I think, felt, it was a pretty hefty price, Frank, to go into the ABA. It was a $4 million fee. We didn't participate in any TV money, I think, for 3 years. We didn't have any draft choices the first year. And so I think John thought fiscally it made more sense. Of course, he sold Artis to the Bulls, sold Louis to the San Antonio Spurs. So instead of writing out checks, he put money in his pocket. And I think at the time, it probably was the smartest thing to do financially. But if John had known that franchise would be worth about $2 billion today, he might have had other thoughts.
I heard that and I don't know the particulars of this, but I believe the Bass brothers in San Antonio made the greatest deal ever made, because when they sold the franchise, and again, my facts aren't specific, but they took a piece of the television money, which was negligible in 76 or 77, but they're still collecting on that today, and they make probably billions of dollars every year based on their contract.
Yeah, Frank. It wasn't San Antonio; it was St. Louis.
St. Louis. Okay. Yes, you're right.
The spirit of St. Louis, because John Y. had these players that he could sell to the NBA, like Artis and Louis. And the two brothers in St. Louis said, well, wait a second, we don't have anybody we can sell. We need something out of this. And they were given, because there were 7 franchises at the time, they were given 1/7 of each of the 4 teams that went in their TV money. And as you said, it's wound up to be, close to $1 billion.
Back end.
The famed back end. Yeah. Frank talks about that often in television.
It's considered the greatest sports deal ever made.
Really?
The Bass brothers in St. Louis.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yep. So, Dan, I know Artis played against Wilt. Did you play against Wilt and Russell? And what was that like, if you did?
I didn't play against Bill. I only played against Wilt one time. And that was toward the end of the ABA, without being okayed by the NBA or the ABA. The Players Association got together and played a couple of all-star games. There were 2 of them, and I only played in one, but it was in, I believe, the Nassau Coliseum. And I did play against Wilt in that game. And I'm just thankful I only had to play against him once.
Wow.
Because Billy's a big Wilt fan.
Well, I am, because I think, listen, I mean, his individual records are astonishing, and he was one of the fastest guys in the NBA from what I've read about him, and durable like yourself. I mean, you were unbelievable. You're noted for your durability. I mean, you played, how many games did you miss in your whole career? I mean, 17 games or something?
Yeah, it wasn't very much, and you're right about Wilt. One season, Billy, Wilt played more minutes than there were in a regular season, and he did that because there were some overtime games. So if he had played just 82 regular season games, he had more minutes than if he'd played all 82 every minute there was. My favorite Wilt story was he went in for a raise one year, and they said, well, Wilt, we know you can rebound and score, but you can't pass the ball. You don't get any assists. The next season, Wilt led the NBA in assists.
Wow. Yeah, unbelievable.
And remarkably, Wilt never fouled out of a basketball game.
No.
That is remarkable.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, that's incredible that you played against him, and then you speak so highly of him, and I'm sure he speaks highly of you as well. If we had the opportunity to interview
To
him,
exhume him.
to exhume him, yeah. If we ever had the opportunity.
Who are some of the other great basketball players that you played against, and how would you assess their abilities to play in a league today?
Yeah. Well, I played. I think I played over 60 games against Kareem, and I have great respect for Kareem. He was the general population didn't understand what a great guy Kareem was. I remember when I first went to Denver, there was a player there that had played in the ABA by the name of Byron Beck, and Byron Beck and I were about the same size, had the same coloring, and so we're playing the Lakers the very first time. And Kareem and I are lined up on the free throw line, and Kareem looks over at me and says, "Hi, Byron." Well, he knew who I was, but he was just giving me a hard time. And one time we're playing in McNichols, and I get the ball on the wing right in front of Pat Riley. Pat Riley's coaching. Pat's behind me, and I can hear him saying, "Don't go for the head fake. Don't go for the head fake." Well, I gave Kareem one of my best. And Kareem jumped, and I went around him and dunked. The next 3 times down the floor, Kareem dunked on me. And so there was never anything said, but I got the message loud and clear. So I would have to say Kareem's the best. The guy that I had the most trouble with was Moses Malone. Wow. Because I could go out on the floor and I could make a 15, 18-foot jump shot. And it wasn't that these big guys couldn't do it. They just, they weren't used to doing it. They didn't have to guard somebody like me. But Moses Malone had the quickness. He could come out on the floor and cover me. And so he would be one I'd say that gave me the toughest time.
He came into the league. He was only 17. Is that right?
Yep, came right into the ABA. With I believe the Utah Stars.
Utah Stars, correct.
17 years old. Yeah. You talked before about your head fake you gave to Kareem. And I was reading a quote of yours with self-deprecating humor where you said, my head fake was the worst move in the history of basketball, and it worked every single time.
Billy, if people had stopped going for that head fake, I never would have sniffed the Hall of Fame. I'll tell you that. Sure.
How about Julius Erving?
Julius is unbelievable. I would say outside of the centers. Of course, I thankfully never had to guard Julius. But outside of the centers that I played against, he would be. Now, I only played against Michael Jordan twice. His rookie year was my last year, so I only saw him once in Chicago and once in Denver. But Julius is the best I've ever seen. By the time he got to the NBA, and was playing with World B. Free and Moses Malone and George McGinnis, he kind of tempered his game. But I saw Julius do things early on in his career in the ABA that I've never seen anybody do before or since. He had hands. I mean, he holds a basketball like the rest of us would hold a volleyball. And one of the proudest moments is when I went into the Hall of Fame, and you said, Frank, in 1993, in that class, which until recently, when Kobe went in and Tim Duncan and that class, this was arguably the best class in the history of the Hall of Fame. But Julius and I went in together in 1993, and we were the first two players who started our careers in the ABA to be inducted. So that was really a proud moment for me.
Well, after my Artis' junior year at Jacksonville, where as you know I went with Artis. Artis went up to a camp in Massachusetts, and he came back from that camp, and he said, "I have seen the greatest player that I have ever seen in my life." And I said, "Who was that?" And he said, "Julius Erving." I said, "Who?"
Yeah.
I said, "Who?" He said, "Mark my words, you will never say who after you see him play."
Yeah.
And I want to guess, you guys' first 5 years were all spent in the ABA. If you guys, those were probably your best years. Would you think? I mean, I don't want to say they were wasted in the ABA because you guys reached a point where you guys could play with anybody. But as far as contemporary history is concerned, I think your best years were spent in the ABA. Of course, you had great years in the NBA, as noted by your Hall of Fame careers. But do you think that's the reason why yourself, Artis, and Alex English were not voted into the top 75 players of all time?
Yeah, I think I don't know why Alex wasn't, because Alex was in the decade of the 80s, 1980 to 1990. Alex English was the leading scorer in the league for those 10 years, and that was all NBA. I think you're right, Frank. I think people really today don't understand how good the ABA was, and as I say, the NBA doesn't even recognize our stats, and so Artis and I in something like that would only be judged from the time I went to Denver and the time he went to Chicago. And so I kind of understand that. And it was, I thought the top 75 was heavily weighted toward current or recent players. But a guy like Alex English, there's no way in the world Alex English isn't one of the top 75 NBA players of all time.
I think you're right, Dan. It's so subjective, the top 75 players of all time. I mean,
recency bias.
Yeah, recency bias. Like I can't even understand when they mention the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I never even heard anybody mention Wilt, but notwithstanding that, for your own modesty, I mean, you're talking about guys in the ABA like Moses and Gerwin and Dr. J and Artis. And yet you were the ABA NBA All-Star game. You would have voted the MVP.
But yeah. Dan can stay with any of them.
Without a doubt.
I'll tell you right now, Dan can stay with anybody. I've known of Dan since his great years at Kentucky. I mean, I believe Dan's by far the most famous athlete ever come out of University of Kentucky. Football, baseball, basketball, and they've had a tremendous legacy of Kentucky basketball. But the list of greats starts with Dan Issel.
Without a doubt. I should apologize for my sweatshirt, I guess. It's a UF on it. I should have thought better of that when I threw it on. But yeah, Kentucky basketball. I mean, Adolph Rupp. I mean, you played for Adolph Rupp. You played for UB Brown. You played for Larry Brown. Who was the best coach you think you ever played for?
Billy, what I've always said is I learned different things from different people. Coach Rupp was a strict disciplinarian. I mean, we couldn't, if you can imagine this, we couldn't talk during practice. The only thing you heard during practice was the bounce of the ball, the squeak of the shoes, and his voice. That's it. And work and from him, I learned the importance of hard work and dedication. And one of his favorite sayings was, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." So I learned that from Coach Rupp. From Hubie Brown. Hubie Brown was the most prepared coach I ever played for. And artists will tell you the same thing. This is long before analytics and film study and things like that. When we went in to play a game, a team, Hubie would have on the board, we ran this play for artists 12 times the last time we played this team, and we scored 8 times. We ran this play for Issel 8 times, and we scored twice. So don't throw the ball to Issel. Throw the ball. And so he was the best prepared. Larry Brown was the best teacher I ever played for. So I've always thought that's why Larry was better suited for the college game than the pro game. But as you say, I was blessed to play for some great ones, and I think I took a little bit from each one of them.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jacksonville, and because your team styles, as you said, were so different. At Kentucky, you couldn't talk, and at Jacksonville, we were running drills to music. And when we were fortunate enough to beat Kentucky at Ohio State and to make our play to be in the Final Four, how did Coach Rupp react to you guys losing to Jacksonville?
Well, Coach Rupp, it was very important. Coach Rupp was very competitive, and winning national championships at the end of his coaching career, winning national championships was the only thing that mattered to him. And he had come close a few years earlier when Kentucky was beaten in the finals by Texas Western. We thought we had a pretty good chance to win a national championship that year. And so, Coach Rupp took that loss pretty hard, not because of the situation and, that one team played music at practice and the other team didn't, and the other team had a lot of African-American players and our team didn't. He took it hard because all he wanted to do at that stage of his career was win national championships.
Wow. Well, you obviously are super proud of your years at Kentucky. And I read an interview that you did, and you pretty much introduce yourself. When somebody's talking to you, you don't talk to yourself as a former NBA player or as a former ABA player. You still talk to yourself as a Kentucky player.
Well, that seems to get the most attention. When people see my size and they say, "Well, you must have played basketball," and I say, "Yeah," and they say, "Where do you play?" And I don't say I played for the Kentucky Colonels or the Denver Nuggets. I say I played at the University of Kentucky. That gets their attention, that's for sure.
Well, Mitch Barnhart and John Calipari, listen up. Dan Issel says he's got difficulty getting stuff from the University of Kentucky. So you guys better put together an double XL large care package for him and get it to him for Christmas, because if Dan played a major part in the University of Kentucky basketball. Let me go on and follow up with a question. Who do you think affected your coaching style the most? Larry Brown, or you said, I know you were a great coach and general manager in the NBA as well. How do you think those 3 coaches affected your coaching styles?
Yeah. You've been very kind and said some nice things about my playing career that I really appreciate. But to say I was a great coach and general manager, Frank, I think you're stretching it. When I coached, I really tried to coach like my longtime coach, who's not in the Hall of Fame, and that's Doug Moe. Doug, when we were on the floor, that was the most important thing, whether it was practice or in a game. That was the most important thing. And Doug could call you every name in the book. But when you went off the floor, he was just one of the guys. He could scream at you during the game and go out to dinner with you after the game. And so when I was coaching, that's what I tried to be. I tried to be tough on the players when we were on the floor, But once we were off the floor, then I'd not be their friend, but at least have a good relationship. And not to make light of it, but probably the biggest thing that happened to me in the world of basketball was the year we took that young team with Dikembe Mutombo, LaFonso Ellis, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and we knocked off Seattle in the first round of the playoffs when they had the best record in the NBA. That still is very special, and I stay very close to a lot of those players.
You talk about trash talking. I believe a lot of people are known for trash talking. Probably the most famous trash talker, I believe, was Larry Bird. Is that true?
He was. If he wasn't the top one, he's in the top three.
I had heard the same thing, that Bird was a real trash talker.
So what? How do you define trash talking? Can you give us some examples of it?
Well,
you can use any words that are appropriate.
First Amendment guys here. Just open up. No worries.
Well, I can't think of of course, I didn't have to guard Bird either, so that was a blessing. But I don't think I ever heard in those days, heard a lot of profanity. It was just, did you see what I just did? And I'm going to come down next time and do it again. And so I think Larry Bird was a great trash talker because he could back it up. I see guys today, whether it's on the basketball court or on the football field, and they make an ordinary play and they jump up and start pounding their chests and say, look at me. And, I'm not that impressed with that if that's the only play they make the entire game. So to be a good trash talker, you have to be able to back up what you're talking about.
That reminds me, you talk about the NFL. How can guys celebrate and hit their chest when they're 3 touchdowns behind when they make
blows my mind. That blows my mind. You had an incredible work ethic. Everybody talks about your work ethic. When anything I read about Dan Issel, incredible work ethic. How many hours a day? Were you a gym rat all your life? How many hours a day did you spend in the gym when you were a kid?
And Billy, I don't think I spent, an extraordinary amount of time more than other people. I will say, when I was in high school, I was really fortunate that we had a coach that really took an interest in me. I did not play, and that's why I laugh about these kids today. They haven't even started their junior years yet, and they're telling people what college they're going to go to, and most of them are good enough to do that. I hadn't played a varsity basketball game in my little town until my junior year, but I had a coach who was brand new that year, and he'd bring me in a half hour, 45 minutes before the game or before school, and we'd practice, and he'd keep me, a half hour after practice to do some additional work. But when I was on the court, I tried not to waste the time. I figured I was there to work, and if I came off the practice floor and wasn't exhausted, then I knew I hadn't done a very good job that day.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to ask you an indelicate question. When did you lose those front teeth?
I lost them in the 7th grade. It was the first day of school, and we were running laps in the gymnasium, and the custodian had waxed the gym floor. And I went into a corner and fell, and the first thing that hit the floor was my mouth. And I got up, and 3 of my teeth did not. And so they were in the floor. But the worst part of the story, guys, is the nurse had read something that said, if you stick them right back in, maybe they'll take. So she grabs me, and I got blood coming all the way down the front of my shirt. She's holding my 3 front teeth in her hand. We walk into the dentist office, and my mother is in the chair. So
I always remember you without the front teeth. Did you play without them deliberately because they were intimidating?
Of course, I had a plate that I wore off the court, but my dentist said there's no sense putting them in permanently because you just get them knocked out again. So it never bothered me. It seemed to bother other people, but they're permanent they're permanent now. They don't come out.
That's hilarious.
That is hilarious.
That's a funny story. So Dan, what are you doing today?
Today, I'm associated with an organization here in Louisville that's trying to bring an NBA team to Louisville. It's a long shot, even if the NBA does decide to expand. There's going to be a lot of competition for that. Seattle, Las Vegas, Kansas City, and others. And I'm also doing the thing I'm doing that's really fun is every weekday morning from 10 to noon, I do a sports talk show with my dear friend Mike Pratt, who is a teammate at Kentucky, teammate with the Colonels, now does the play-by-play on the radio for the Kentucky basketball broadcast, and we have a blast. We've had artists on the show, we've had Julius on the show, we just had Fonz on the show. He has been inducted into the Notre Dame Ring of Fame.
LaFonso Ellis?
LaFonso Ellis, who was one of my players on that team that upset Seattle, and just had him on recently. And so we're having a blast. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning, Frank, and take a shower. So
yeah, well, Mike's. I do know Mike, so please give him my best. And if you guys are ever looking for talk show hosts, Billy and I are available because we can talk about our book. If these lips can talk, Lamar's Gamble, which is a book about the AFL and NFL merger, and I can send you a copy if you'd like.
Well, let's do this. Come on the show and talk about it, and we'll try to sell a few books.
Great.
Who's better than you? Nobody.
Well, thanks for that. If you are successful with getting Louisville into the NBA, where would it play? Where would your home be? The Yum Center? Well, is that the name of the
the Yum Center is really an amazing building. It was built with housing an NBA team. They have a separate practice floor. They have additional locker rooms. And so it would be a great home for an NBA team. And so that's the venue that we would use if it happens.
And why wouldn't it happen? Because if you were there, that place would be sold out every night.
Yep. From what I understand, and I'm certainly not an expert, but try to pick up as much as I can, a lot of the NBA owners don't want to expand because they don't want to split the pie, any smaller. The TV revenues, as you both know, are through the roof. But they tell me that when sports gambling, and I saw that Ohio just passed it, and I think there's like 10 or 11 states now, when sports betting is legal over most of the country, the money that the NBA will get from that will make the TV money look like pocket change. Incredible. So that's the main reason that I understand that some of the owners, and you don't have to have a simple majority. You have to have, I think it's like 26 votes for this to pass. So it's my understanding that's why, if it doesn't happen, that's why expansion wouldn't happen.
Well, we talk about money. We're talking about the driving force of everything. When Billy asked you about the players being bigger and stronger, a lot of that is because of money. Because, I hate to say this, but 50 years ago, the coaches would be gym teachers. That's who the coaches would be. Now they're making $10 million a year, and that works its way down to colleges and high schools. Now high schools are recruiting. Kids are transferring in high schools left and right. I think there's now a pro league starting next year where a kid can be paid $100,000 to skip his senior year in high school if he knows that he wants to go pro. So he can play a senior year in high school in this pro league, go to the G League, which will pay him a little bit more than $100,000, and build his his skills up to the point where he can go to the NBA in 19 years at 19 years old. Somebody said, somebody who would know. Oh, I think James Worthy would say, nobody can learn anything in 1 year of college. So, and like he was talking about Anthony Davis, specifically, he said John Calipari didn't teach any basketball to Anthony Davis. He got him ready for the pros, and John Calipari does a great job in that. What do you think of all this money?
Well, first of all, you're right. It is a professional. Anybody who says college sports isn't professional, they don't know what they're talking about. Now we even have free agency. It's called the transfer portal,
right?
And so it has changed a great deal. Now, having said that, when a football coach is making $10 million a year, and a player's parents can't go to a bowl game to watch him play because they don't have the money, that's not fair either. But it seems like whenever money gets involved, it just continues to grow and continues to grow. They haven't released, just recently, we had T.J. Beisner on. Now, you won't recognize the name T.J. Beisner, but you may before long. He's in charge of name, image, and likeness at the University of Kentucky.
Wow.
Now, they have not released anything that the amount of money that any of the athletes at Kentucky are making. I can tell you Ty Washington is driving an $80,000 automobile around campus. And so whenever, there has to be something, but it seems like whenever something gets done, then it just explodes.
Yep.
So I don't know where it's going to end, but it doesn't surprise me. If college kids are getting paid, why couldn't high school kids get paid?
High school kids are getting paid.
Oh, they really?
Yeah.
They are getting paid because now they're involved in this name and image and likeness. So as it flows downhill, some college kids, I think high school kids at local high schools like Sierra Canyon High School, where LeBron's son goes and where Scottie Pippen's son went, and I believe Wade's son goes there. They've got pockets full of money, and like Shaq said to his kids, "We aren't rich. I'm rich." And that's a good philosophy to have, but now he couldn't say that anymore because Bronny can sell his name and likeness, Wade can sell his name and likeness, and Wade's son can sell his name and likeness. So they're going to be rich before their time, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that some of them defer on their senior year of high school to go to this $100,000 league and play for money.
Yeah.
Well, how do you guys feel about that? I think that, the amount of money that's made in college basketball, like college football, is incredible. So, I mean, the product is the players. Shouldn't they get a piece of the pie? I'm fine with that. How do you feel about that, Dan?
Yeah, I do think that the college athletes, like I said, they ought to get something, to take. Their folks can travel, or they don't have to eat fast food every night. But this idea, like the kid, I believe his name is Ewers. He's a quarterback from Texas. He reclassified and went to Ohio State last semester. And supposedly he had $1.4 million name, image, and likeness deal. He's already left Ohio State and gone into the transfer portal. So when it gets down below the college level, then I don't agree with that at all. They ought to leave these high school kids alone.
Yeah, again, it's just too much money. I believe within 5 years there'll be no NCAA because they have no rights and powers over college football now anyway. Because you're not a Power 5, you can't be in. NCAA has no control over the Power 5.
Right.
So I believe that'll happen in basketball. and eventually the NCAA will just go away.
Well, Dan made a great point. I agree with Dan about going down into the high school level. There's a great saying that the Romans have: those whom the gods would destroy, they make successful young. Now, it's hard enough to handle money and a big contract when you're in college, but you're getting down at the high school level. That's really playing with the forces, you know?
Yeah. Well, the name, image, and likeness that I referenced, the Kentucky's doing a great job. They're telling these kids, hey, you know, at the end of the year, you're going to have to pay taxes on this money. So open an account and put a certain percentage in there. They're also asking these kids at the University of Kentucky to give something to charities along the way. So Kentucky, I think if you're doing it that way,
Right.
And a lot of these athletes are sharing, like I know the quarterback at Kentucky has a deal with a steakhouse in Lexington, and he takes his offensive linemen to the steakhouse once a week. So, you know, some people are doing it right, but you know, guys, when there's going to be this much money involved, there's going to be shysters involved.
Oh,
sure.
yeah. The Sharks are coming, without a doubt.
And you saw that with the Ball brothers. They fortunately, I guess, their Ball brothers' father is going to be sort of like a model father for the future for his kids, because he took his boys out of school and he made them play professionally in Lithuania or wherever. And Lonzo got 1 year of college, but LaMelo played in Australia, and now they're eating up the NBA. I mean, LaMelo's a far better than Lonzo, but they're still dominant forces in the NBA.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So if you're looking back at it all now, there's a great quote that that Frank had mentioned to me, and I had written it down too, because it was just Adolph Rupp when he didn't think you were getting the ball enough. He had called timeout, and he got the boys in the huddle. He said, this guy is going to be Kentucky's all-time leading scorer. He says, by the time he leaves here. He said, I thought you might want to meet him and introduce Dan, which I thought was a great way to say, give the guy the goddamn ball, for Christ's sake, and get out of the way. Give him the ball and get out of the way.
That actually happened. We were about 5 minutes into a game, and I don't believe I'd touched the ball yet. And that's exactly what happened. Coach Rupp called timeout, and that's exactly.
You might like to meet him. I thought that was just a great one-liner.
Hey, Dan, let me ask you in closing. You know, you're a sports talk host now with Mike Pratt, and we've done a half-assed job of interviewing you, I'm sure. But have you ever? Is there any one question that you've never been asked that you hoped somebody would ask you? And if it is, what was it, and what's the answer?
Well, you know, I don't know that I've ever been asked what I want people to think of me, and after I'm gone, and I guess it would be something that Billy alluded to earlier. And that was my work ethic. When I took the court to play or to coach, some nights it was okay, some nights it wasn't very good. But I never left the court thinking there was something I could have done better, that I could have tried harder at. And so that's what I'd like people to think about me.
That speaks volumes.
Well,
absolute volumes.
You've been a great guest, Dan. And let me just read off some of your accolades. Member of the Batavia High School Hall of Fame. Member of the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. Member of the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Member of the University of Kentucky Athletics Hall of Fame. Member of the College Sports Hall of Fame. Number retired by the Denver Nuggets, and member of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Quite a life.
And now we'll make a mook in the Mike's Hall of Fame, too.
Yeah, now I'll make a mook in the Mike's Hall of Fame for sure. Thanks, Dan. You've been a terrific guest.
Hey, let me tell you something. I really appreciated being with both of you. Thank you for all the kind words. And Frank will be in touch. I'll get you on the show.
Okay,
that'd
great.
be wonderful. Absolutely
Great.
wonderful.
That'll
Thank
be
you so much,
great.
Dan, for coming out. Real pleasure to meet you.
And have a happy holidays to everybody in
Merry
Kentucky and everybody else.
Merry Christmas, pal.
Merry
the very
Christmas.
best. The very best. Just great guest. Terrific guest.
He was a great guest, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Very interesting guy. I mean, and like you said, I mean, incredible accolades. I mean, everything. The guy shattered so many records in the NBA and the ABA. You know, I mean, we're talking about the names we're throwing around. You know, Moses Malone and Artis and Dr. J.
And Michael Jordan and Larry Bird.
This guy, meanwhile, is the ABA, the MVP of the All-Star game in the ABA.
Yeah.
Those guys could fly. I mean, there was times I watched Dr. J and I actually thought he could fly. You know?
Yeah, and you know, Elgin Baylor was the first. Elgin Baylor was the first great quote-unquote flyer. He begat Dr. J. Dr. J begat David Thompson. Dr. J and David Thompson begat Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan begat Kobe Bryant. And, you know, now we got so many flyers. There's not enough. You need an air traffic controller to go,
everybody
to go to an NBA game. Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting when you talked about the greatest of all time and the 75 greatest players and all of that. Yeah, they're very big on recents.
Yeah, recency bias.
Without
recency
a doubt.
bias.
Without a doubt. I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, well, Jesus, I'm 73. You're right around the corner. What are you, 72, 73?
I'll be 72 in February.
72. Well, you're going to live 1,000 years from now. So
I got 30 more years.
30
more
But I mean,
years.
so we've seen some of the real greats, you know, and I'd like to have seen more of Oscar Robertson. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see the Big O, you know,
Yep.
like
Oscar Robertson is forgotten also. I mean, I just forgot him.
yeah.
So,
Big O was like, you know, when they talk about the
Triple doubles.
triple doubles, he was the man. I mean, I think they started taking that stat because of Oscar Robertson.
Yep.
And nobody talks about him as being one of the greatest of all times, and he certainly was.
He was indeed.
You know,
he was indeed. So what else you want to? You know what? We didn't do what are you reading, and because I didn't think it was appropriate to do it with Dan. Of course, he would have been reading. He's a very literate guy, but the one question that we would have done if we did that would, how would you like to be remembered? And when I asked him what question had you never been asked before, it was sort of the equivalent of, how would you like to be remembered?
How would you like to be remembered? What would you like on your headstone?
Schmuck, I could have been in the. I could have been in the
somebody.
I could have been in the Dan Issel Hall of Fame.
You could have been a contender. You could have been somebody.
Unbelievable.
It wasn't your night, Frank. It was your night. All you had to do was read it.
I'm smart.
Smart? Not like everybody says.
Oh my gracious! How much smarter couldn't I have been?
Yeah, that was right there for you, Frank. It was teed up for you, brother. Teed up for you. Yeah, but you know, he did say his work ethic, and that's. I mean, his nickname is the Horse, just like Alan Amici.
Yep.
The Horse, and the Horse for a reason, because he played, and when we talked about
Artis played every game. Artis has got one of those records that will stay up forever for the amount of games he played in a row.
And it was funny when we talked about Chamberlain. We're talking about the 53 individual records. He has 100 points in one game. The first thing Dan said was,
Durable.
he never missed a game.
Durable.
Yeah.
Rod Carew always talks about consistency and durability, He wants a guy that goes out there every day and does it right. And that's what.
Let me ask you a question as Artis' friend and agent. The big guys, of course, you know, the wear and tear on their knees and their bodies running up and down the court. How is Artis' knees? Do they bother him?
Artis' knees are fine. I mean, he's had a couple of knee operations, but, you know, just over the course. I think the bigger thing with big men, and Artis has thankfully escaped it, is their hearts.
Wow.
So many big men have passed away very early in life. Wilt, Moses Malone.
Well, I couldn't pass a high school biology test, but I'm assuming that the heart, the organ is the same size regardless of the size of the man.
Well, it's proportionate to the size of the man. They don't have a regular heart because when Rod had his heart transplant, Rod Carew, they transplanted the heart of a 6'8" in man, Conrad Ruland, tight end with the Ravens. They transplanted Conrad's heart in Art's body, and it was a larger heart. So Rod now says his heart beats like a Ferrari. Wow. So, but just the stress of carrying that weight and that height, it weighs on him.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, when you're looking at somebody 7'3", 7'4", the weight, like I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Wilt was close to 300 pounds, wasn't he?
He had to be. You can't spread that much 6-foot body or a 5'8" body. You have to have a bigger frame to support a bigger body. Now, Artis, when he was playing, he played at 240 out of Jacksonville, but now he's at 310.
Yeah,
which sounds like it's
and
really,
he's still not fat by any stretch of the imagination.
He's a normal sized human being for a guy 7'1", 7'2".
I saw a picture of Dan Issel next to Artis. Of course, there was many of them taken, and without the fro, I mean, Artis is pretty much, it doesn't look that much taller than Dan.
He's taller than, he's probably at least a half a foot taller.
Did you think it's not 6 inches? Really doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it's 6'9" to 7'2". Now they both maybe shrunk a half an inch since their playing days, but
Issel played big. I mean, he played big for his size, and like Charles Barkley reminds me of a guy who played really big for his size.
Yeah. So anyway, we've spent enough time of our holiday cheer. We want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, whatever else we
Festivus
missed.
for the rest of us.
Happy Festivus for the rest of us. We'll be back on the 28th, just me and Billy chatting. We're going to fulfill a Derek Harris request that he just wants a day of us chatting. So we'll just chat away.
Whoever wants to tune into that debacle, tune into that debacle. But in the meantime, read some books, for God's sake. It's a good thing to do. Read a few books, and I got 3 I can recommend off the top of my head. Just
you got 4.
Lamar's Gamble, Combustible, and if you want to read a little bit about gambling and the futility of sports gambling, read Confessions of a Bronx Bookie. But before I leave on that note, it was interesting what Dan said about the NBA is looking at more money from gambling than they are from the television contracts.
Blows your mind, right?
And we know what the television contract was worth to the AFL. That's what kept them in business.
You know what happened? All of the sharps figured this out at Harvard and the Ivy League schools, Stanford, UCLA, and that's behind all of this gambling taking off now, because a guy like Billy O'Connor would never figure out how to work, how to beat the system, but the sharps figured out how to refine the system and to work it to their benefit. And
without a doubt,
they're no longer gambling; they're making the benefits of gambling on the right side.
Without a doubt. I mean, I can even tell you, as a 73-year-old guy and a sick gambler his whole life, when I used to go to the casinos in Vegas and the mob owned the casinos, back in the day, you had a shot. I mean, you were still going to lose, but you had a shot.
Yeah.
Once these MIT boys started building billion-dollar casinos,
you have no shot.
And they started changing the rules, just massaging them a little bit, little things.
You had no shot.
You had no shot.
Anyway, I got to finish my Christmas shopping. So.
All right, my brother. What are you buying me? You're buying me something lavish, I hope.
I'll buy you a ho, ho, ho. Three.
Something gouch.
Ho, ho, ho.
All right, on that note,
say goodbye,
Merry
Derek.
Christmas, Happy New Year. Enjoy your holidays by all means. Spend some time with your family because, Frank, a man who doesn't spend time with his family is not really a man at all. And the immortal words of Don Corleone.
And the immortal words of Don Rickles, man who's got a family that loves him and his health has everything anyone can ever ask for. So I wish that to you, each of you, for yourselves.
Can't follow that act, brother. Let's go out on that. That's a hell of a nice sentiment, Frank.
See you next week.
See you next week, hopefully.
We'll see you next week.